meeting is being recorded.
All right, something new. If you want to mute yourselves, that'd be wonderful, folks. And welcome aboard for our first Zoom Rock Room 2023. And welcome to our co-host, Melanie. Tracy, how you doing, Melanie?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Santa Claus was good to me, and
Me as well.
bought me a lot of nice pieces of coal. And how can anything like that not like coal? I mean, all that. So yep, we had a wonderful time, and as I talked about in the last Zoom Rock Room, I went to the Factory Whistle concert, participated in that 12:15 Christmas morning, and we made a lot of noise and heard a lot of car horn honking going on, but we had our good traditional Christmas day, and New Year's Day was pretty quiet, watching football games and eating pork and sauerkraut. So how about you?
Yeah, me as well. It was kind of a low-key Christmas and New Year's. I kind of liked it. It was more relaxed. We didn't go too far. We stayed in York County, and we also had pork and sauerkraut and watched football games and didn't make as much noise, but we my holidays were pretty similar.
Good. All right. Well, I do have a couple of jokes here to pass on to you. What do computers like to eat?
I'm gonna guess microchips.
You're exactly right. You must be looking at my cards.
No, I just got lucky on that one.
Take small bites.
Small bites. That's a good one. Who said that one? I didn't see you light up. Okay. Thanks for that little additional one. And where do animals go when their tails fall off? Now, you working at Nixon Park, Mel?
I do.
You should know this answer.
Where do they go, Jerry?
To the retail store.
That's a funny one.
All right. All right. Well, we got lots to do tonight, so we'll get right to it here with the introduction. Now I can do it. All right. Take us away, Mel.
Sure thing. So again, welcome back. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope that all of your Christmas holidays and New Year's resolutions and all your celebratory holidays in the last 2 weeks were good to you, and you visited family and friends and ate some good food and watched some good TV, and however you celebrate, I hope it was great. So welcome to 2023 with Jerry and I. And of course, we have our sponsor, our Zoom Rock Room sponsor, with Lair Architecture in Lake Havasu City in Arizona, designed for the future. So feel free to email them.
And of course, Andrew and Epic on board with Dirtman's reports. We have a mini one tonight that was just added into our intro because of what happened to him the other day. We'll get into that just a little bit later. But go out and look at extremecody.com with the reports that they have done before. And we're starting something new tonight. I'm going to advertise that a little bit later, but we had a request from one of our Zoom members to have you email us questions before a show so we can come on air and have an answer for you. And one of the questions that was emailed to me by Terry was he'd like to know how do you access the C&D Canal fossil sites? And I know Andrew's been down there a number of times, so I've asked Andrew to answer that question for Mr. Terry if he's in here tonight. So go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was there probably 6 times over last year, 2020. This is what you go for belemnites. They're everywhere. Of course, I came up with a whole lot more other cool things, iridescent ammonites and stuff like that, which are currently on fossilguy.com. Some of the finds that I found in 2022. If you also go to fossilguy.com, you can also see the following pictures, and he gives you where to park, what to do, where to actually look. I will tell you, I have seen a post recently that does say that the main pit is flooded right now. I know that Army Corps was doing some stuff out there. I saw one picture of the pit, right in the very front. I'll show you where that is. Was full of water. To me, that's not a big deal because there's plenty of other places to go. So here, let me just share this here. So this is the site. You're going to come in on Route 9, and if you look up the Reedy Point State Park, or if you just go to fossilguy.com, he's got all the directions there. This is the site. You're going to come in off of Route 9. You're going to come down the little Polk town to your left over here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but come
excuse
down.
me, all we see is the Dirt Man report.
And we can't see your screen, Andrew.
It does say I'm sharing, so maybe you do have
You
to
might
stop
have to
sharing.
stop sharing, Jerry, for his screen to pop up.
All right, now try it.
Cool. Here we go. How's that? Everyone see that?
It's coming. There we go.
Cool. Does anyone
thanks.
see my mouse moving around?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So this is Route 9 over here. This is the main drag. That's just south of the town, and I will warn you, obey the speed limits because it's like 25 mile an hour and there's always a cop sitting there, no matter what. So you're going to come in off of Route 9 before you get to the bridge on this little Polk Town place. It's a little side road that just veers off the road. Right here used to be the Reedy Point, whatever they called it, meeting hall, whatever. It's been leveled. Last time I was there, it was completely gone and flat. So you come in here off of Polk Town, and right here where it says Reedy North Disposal Area, it is actually a disposal area. The Army Corps of Engineers have used this site over many, many, many years to dump dredgings from the C&D Canal. So you're going to come to here. You're going to go under the bridge. This is a big, massive bridge. You'll see it in my video. If you check out Dirt Man Report, C&D Canal, and then you come and you park right here. I recommend starting here and not going all the way out to the point. Some people come over here, but I've heard lately hasn't been producing as much. I have found so much right where this red pin is actually. There's actually a berm right at that red pin that I pulled some iridescent ammonites, really, really cool fossils, little fish, vertebrae and stuff like that. And I sent them to the Fossil Guy. He's got them up on his site along with his stuff. So yeah, and where you're right here, where you're going to park, it looks sort of like this. Hold on. See if it'll switch. You all see in the next slide here?
Yep.
All right. So this is basically what it looks like where you're going to park. Do not block the road in there. There is a gate. Don't block that. Park along the dirt road as far off the road as you can. This is actually Fossil Guy's website right here. The last picture you saw was Fossil Guy's website too. So these are directions. You've got everything you possibly need. He goes through all the different things you can find. So that's pretty much all I got to say, really. I mean, there is a collecting area on the south side of the C&D Canal down here, but I have not heard many good reports from there. I haven't even tried it myself, just because I've had so much success right in this little triangle right here. I'll tell you, the rest of this is all muddy over here, and the rest of this is all pretty thick brush. I did get into this area before the brush got heavy this year, and I did find some cool stuff. But this is a great area right here, just for the the beginners and the people who are just going there for the first time. So I will say, you know, I've got 6 jars just from walking around. These are actually all points. Yeah, plenty to find there. Back to you, Jerry.
All right, Andrew, thank you. Hope that answered Terry's question, if he's in here tonight or not. All right, Institute in Waynesboro, starting out a new year. And we saw a posting today. They're having a Gettysburg bird trip featuring short-eared owls on January the 14th. You have to pre-register for that through their website. They're also doing the Appalachian Trail hike on January 29th. And again, you have to pre-register for that. And up there in the top left-hand corner, the 2023 geology programs that we are doing for the Institute. May 4th, a Thursday night in Waynesboro. We'll be doing our indoor lecture, and then the May 6th is the all-day bus field trip. It's going to be actually featuring York County geology. So most likely you'll have to go to Waynesboro and pick up a bus and come back to York County if you live in York County, or if you live someplace else, you just come to Waynesboro and meet the bus and off we go. More details about that later, but there's the website for the Institute, info at natureandcultureinstitute.org. Everybody got in the mail today, late this afternoon, email about Pennsylvania Geology Magazine. The winter edition just came out, and there's a good article in there about the Cornwall iron mine, actually. And also there's a little research note written by myself on the new fossil that had been found in York County, and named from Chris Hafner that we have had in the room before. And that little short article is also in the PA Geology Magazine. Melanie.
Alrighty, Crystal Cove Collective with Michael and Krista. 2208 Gettysburg Road in Lower Allen Shopping Center, Camp Hill, PA. It's one of our other sponsors.
And we do have your minerals, ones that are getting prizes from our last Zoom room. They'll be going out probably on Thursday into the mail for you. So we did get those from Crystal Cove Collective between the holidays there. And here's another Melanie thing.
Yeah, so this is actually one of my favorite slides tonight. This is, so some of you may or may not know, I'm one of the naturalists down at Nixon County Park in York County, and we are hosting our annual Maple Sugaring Days event, where we're tapping maple trees and producing our own maple syrup and teaching the public about the historical significance and how the tapping process.
All right, you'll be seeing that again.
And yeah, so we'll be seeing it again, how the tapping process is done. All the information's there. The dates is the last weekend in February and the first weekend in March. There's a small admissions fee, but there is things like food included, food, drink, like I said, historical significance about maple sugaring, modern day, and then products in our gift shop.
Days. It's pretty nice.
So every time we show that, Melanie, you have to pay me $20. So
Oh man,
that will come out of your pay.
I'm gonna go broke.
Okay, the Zoom Rock Room schedule, here it is. Next time we see you in 2 weeks, it'll be we're gonna be talking about groundwater and the importance of groundwater between Melanie and I. There also will be Joseph will be doing a little short thing about his experience with groundwater study he had in New Jersey. February 7th, I'm looking forward to this one. Vincent Santucci with the national parks. We're talking about preserving fossils in the national parks, and I think he's going to hit on the dinosaur footprints that are at the Gettysburg National Military Park. February 21st, our longtime member Roger Freed from up in Schuylkill County, who's with us tonight, prehistory along the Little Schuylkill River. He's going to talk about some archaeology and what he does for fun up there. March 7th, John Day Fossil Bed National Monument out in Kimberly, Oregon. This is a location that was referred to us by Ken and Mary Fraser actually about 2 years ago. And we've been talking back and forth with them through the COVID deal. And finally, Michelle has been able to get PowerPoint at the National Monument. And we'll be telling you all about their fossil beds out there. March 21st, punctuated tectonic equilibrium, Greg Herman. Basically, this is going to be about impacts, structures on Earth and Mars. So we might invite our astronomy friends to come in for that one also. Another Dirtman report. This is actually just added because of what happened to Andrew on Sunday. You want to set this up at all, Andrew, or?
Yeah, can I preface this that I got it wrong?
Oh yeah, well, it was your initial guess, right?
So it's very quick one right here. Just I only pull out one thing, and I did pull it straight out of Face of Rock. I actually had to use my geologist tools and get it out. But Jerry will tell you probably after the video what it is a lot better. And may I just say, I make my own maple syrup too.
Oh yeah.
Woohoo!
So anyway, sorry, go ahead, roll the film. Man, here it is January 1st, 2023, and I'm in Schuylkill County. I'm getting it done. I'm already out here collecting, and I already found something pretty cool, so I figured I'd share it with you. Check this out. This is quite large. If you see my finger there, we're talking about 3 inches. And that's the length of my finger there. This is looking almost like a cephalopod, but it's got little bumps. Little bumps in there. Let me zoom in here. See the little bumps inside the crevices? Very cool. This is quite large. I think this whole section of rock will come out right here. It's all pretty broken up, but I'm gonna try to keep it together. See what happens. All right, everybody. I got it out. It did crack in one spot there, but it is still a nice piece. Got some cracks sticking out the side. Very cool. Nice find for January 1st, 2023. See you next time.
All right. So what Andrew had after we did some research, he has not a cephalopod. He has a good bit of what's called a Diplora trilobite. Diplora is the largest of the 3 that are found up at New Ringgold, and it's actually the newest trilobite that's been added to the New Ringgold site. We've been finding little pieces of the diploras in the last couple of years, but Andrew's come across the biggest section that I've seen from there. Anyway, so Andrew has most of the thorax here, as we call it, and we're missing the head and we're missing the tail, but diploras can get to be about 5 to 6 inches long if they're not broken up. So that's a great find by Andrew, and like I said, he has the best piece that I've seen from New Ringgold. Those little bumps, which is actually they're on the inside of the body, are a characteristic of a diplora. So when I saw the bumps, that kind of was making me steer toward a trilobite and not a cephalopod. And we did more research, and those bumps kind of nailed it on the head. So great find. I think maybe our friend up there, Roger Freed, will be over there tomorrow digging up the trilobites. But good job, Andrew. Thank you.
If you personal message me, I can show you where I found it. I mean, it's along the ridge, right at the lower end, right below the big boulder that used to be a big boulder that's now just fractured and kind of sitting there.
Right.
But yeah, it was pretty exciting. The fact that I got it out of the rock without damaging it completely was awesome for me. I was more proud of that. So
It'll be great to find a hole in up there. But I have my
keep
doubts.
digging.
Yeah, that rock's been pretty shattered, which is going to make it hard to find a complete one. All right. Well, the new thing on the shelf here, due to our request from Mr. Terry, we're going to set up a little thing called the Information Please Hotline. And if you want to have a question, anything in geology answered, it doesn't have to be local. It could be just anything. Email it to me and we'll find an answer for you, or we'll find somebody that can answer for you, like Andrew with the C&D Canal. We have some experts in the room here in different avenues. So certainly if you have a question at all, bring them on in and we'll get them answered for you. And so that'll be called the Information Please Hotline sort of thing. So just there to help you folks out. So, okay, we have anything else you want to share there, Mel?
I don't believe so.
All right. Hey, I was reading that anybody that likes people know me know I like racing. I was just reading I had finished reading Kyle Petty had just come out with a new book. It's called Swerve or Die. And of course he's part of the famous Petty family. And his book was about pretty much the Petty family growing up and all that. And one of the funny stories that he shared was hanging out with his grandpa, who was Lee Petty. He was the first Petty to drive many years ago, but Grandpa did a lot of babysitting of Kyle in the young days, and Lee's a house telephone. Of course, they didn't have cell phones back in the 50s at all, but Lee's home telephone would ring and Lee wouldn't answer it. And Kyle said, "Grandpa, why didn't you answer the telephone?" And Lee said, "I don't want to talk to anybody. If I want to talk to somebody, I'll pick the phone up and call them." I kind of thought that was kind of funny. But that's kind of guy Lee Petty was. So
He makes a good point.
right. All right. We're going to move on into our program at this point. Okay. And I'm going to put the slide up here because it has some significance to it. I think I met Johnny Johnsson first, I believe it was 1994 or 93, but 94 is my favorite year. And I think this is when I met this gentleman. He actually came to P. Joseph Robb County Park here in York County because I was doing archaeology, and I wanted to consult him for some ideas about some stuff. So Johnny came and had a mutual friend with us, Jay Loniger, who came along, and I got to meet Johnny anyway. Johnny is a mining engineer. He got a degree from Virginia Tech, and he's an excellent mining historian. He does work for Vulcan Materials as an environmental manager, responsible for environmental permits and compliance in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. He is a volunteer ranger with the Soldier's Delight Natural Environment Area in Maryland and leads mining history hikes. I know he usually does them twice a year. They're fabulous to go to. And of course, Soldier's Delight is located within the Chromium District. He's active in the Mining History Association. He has assisted with programs at P. Joseph Robb Park, our summer archaeology programs, and even dressed with me as a gold prospector at a fundraiser gala in York, Pennsylvania. And that's what's on the screen. And by the way, that's Johnny's mining cart that I'm leaning on there. That's the gala that happened at the Country Club of York. And we came dressed, after we set up, we came dressed like that. And the person at the door would not let us in. He said, "You aren't dressed right for this gala. I can't let you in." And he was serious. We had to go find the real person in charge, and they had to tell him, "Go ahead, let them in. We know who they are." So in tonight's program, Johnny's going to share with us what he learned and explored at the discovery site for Iceland Spar in Iceland in September of 2021. So Johnny, I'm going to stop sharing right now, and it's all yours. Thank you for coming back. You're a regular member of the Zoom Rock Room as much as you can be, and it's all yours.
Okay, well, I sort of get situated here. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being interested in my program. And if we make good time in the program, I have a bonus geology thing at the end to show some nice pictures of Iceland. So let me get this slideshow starting, and let's see. You need to tell me what you can or can't see at this point.
Nothing yet.
Okay. Share screen. So I want to share screen too. Share. Okay. Let's try this.
You're there.
Okay. And then I need to be able to see my part of this, which is here somewhere. No, not that one. Let's see. Can you see my mouse when I move it around on the screen?
Yep.
Okay.
We see your title page.
Yeah, I need to see my notes pages, or I don't have anything to refer to. I'm gonna stop sharing and let me try that again with I tried this the other night with my daughter and it worked. All right, so is it back up?
Yep. We have your title page.
Yeah. All right, so it's starting to, is it advancing in that?
Yes.
Okay, okay, well, I'm gonna have to use my paper notes pages because I can't get my notes screen on my second screen tonight. Okay. All right, well, welcome to my program. This is about the discoveries and usage and the site where Iceland Spar was first discovered. We had the opportunity to visit Iceland in September of 2021 in the middle of COVID with our friends Dick and Elna Hauk from the Sterling Hill Zinc Mining Museum in New Jersey. And I want to dedicate this program to Jay Leininger, who Jerry recently mentioned, who was a friend and the editor of Matrix Magazine, which was about the history of minerals and had a lot of articles that blended minerals and mining history together. I want to thank Kyle for his calcite presentation last month that he did in December, that he sort of introduced this and we coordinated a little bit so he wouldn't cover too much of what I was going to cover and vice versa. Because as we there's so much to learn about calcite. We're just going to touch upon a different aspect of it tonight, but certainly not comprehensive in any means. Much of the content of what you're going to see tonight comes from an article that was written in the fall of 2003 in Matrix by Dr. Leo Christensen, who is a geophysicist at the University of Iceland, and he's the resident expert on all things Iceland spar. So he wrote this article in Matrix, and Jay Leininger went over to Iceland and visited him and saw the spot. And that's basically what me and my wife and the house did last September. And so I've used some of the figures from that article, but I also have found other figures where I could elsewhere on the web, and then the ones that I took myself. And so I just wanted to give that as a heads up that I'm relying heavily on that article for some of the key information, because it sort of resides in one place. And then I've tried to expand on it as I have been able. So this map of Iceland was the first geological map of Iceland in 1901. And you can see down in the lower left is the peninsula where Reykjavik is located and where the volcano recently erupted. And the Iceland spar locality is way off to the east in what's called the Eastern Fjords of Iceland. And we were on an 11-day round trip around the island. And in the middle of Iceland is the highlands, which have the large glacier areas. And Iceland is made up of piles of basalt lava flows that originated from seafloor spreading along the mid-Atlantic ridge. And so there's a lot of volcanic features. There's extinct volcanoes, there's dormant volcanoes, and active volcanoes in Iceland. And it's about 99% basalt, so no fossils there. And this map was prepared by someone we'll mention later in the presentation, Thor Thordarson, who was the first Icelandic geologist. So as we look a little bit closer at Iceland, those Eastern Fjords area, you'll see over here, I've made a red calcite rhomb to indicate the location of the spot that we're talking about, which originally was the Helgustadir farm. It's perched high on a fairly barren south-facing slope overlooking Reyðar Fjord, which is the largest fjord in East Iceland. So this is the large fjord. There's a town up here called Eskifjord with this little branch of the fjord here, and the mine is located here. Now, I will apologize in advance. Our tour was self-guided, so we really hardly ever heard anyone speak Icelandic, and so we don't know really how to pronounce Icelandic. And in this research, there's a lot of Danish and Dutch and all very languages I don't know, and so I will pronounce things the best I can, but I don't think they sound at all like the language. The way things are spelled and the way they're pronounced, there are markedly different. So when you think about calcite crystals, it comes in many forms, but the left-hand image here is an 1874 crystallographic drawing by Hessenberg of a typical Icelandic calcite crystal. And in the middle, you see a nice crystal there that's perfectly clear. And then they even developed a postage stamp in 1999 with Iceland calcite crystals as a postage stamp. So that's the calcite from the Helgustadir locality on one of the Icelandic postage stamps. Now, I haven't been able to get one of those postage stamps yet, but I'd like to sometime. So we're going to start back quite a ways, and let's set the stage of the preliminary historical setting of Iceland. Iceland was settled by Scandinavians around 900 AD, and it was ruled by the kings of Norway from the 1200s and later by Denmark. In 1602, the king of Denmark granted trade rights to merchants in Copenhagen, and they established a trading post nearby for fish and wool. Enter our first character, Ole Worm. He was a Danish physician, a natural historian, and antiquary. He was interested in old things and collecting things, an early natural historian. He was married to Dorothea Fink, who was the daughter of the Danish mathematician Thomas Fink. Thomas Fink was famous because he invented the terms tangent and secant, if you know your trigonometry. So when you think about early science and early math, things being developed, these were some of the people that were hanging around together. Well, Ole Worm, he collected and displayed artifacts such as bones, stuffed animals, and birds he had collected, old Roman artifacts, and rocks and minerals. Unfortunately, in 1654, Worm died of the plague. A year later, after his death, they published a catalog of his collection of things, and it was called Wormianum. And it showed a cabinet, a woodcut type of, not a lithograph, a woodcut print that showed the stuff he collected set up on display. And so this catalog was published in 1655. The King of Denmark, King Frederick, acquired Worm's collection, including any Icelandic specimens that Worm may have acquired. So you can see this collection in a cabinet, and then off on the right-hand side, details showing minerals and shells and sea creatures and things like that. You can imagine how someone in the 1600s might have arranged their collection. Well, this Wormianum collection has been reconstructed as a cabinet in the Geological Museum of Natural History in Copenhagen today. And so what they put together, his cabinet of curiosities, is based upon that 1655 catalog. So notice on the right-hand side, the rocks and minerals that are on display. I have been unable to confirm whether there's any Icelandic calcite in this, in the original or in the recreated collection. Now, King Frederick, our next character, he reigned during a good portion of the 1600s. He was a Lutheran king of both Denmark and Norway, and he reigned from 1648 to 1670. He had an absolute monarchy, and before that, he had been the Prince Bishop of Verden and Bremen. King Frederick was interested in the natural sciences, and he was a book collector, and so he was one of the founders of the Royal Library in Copenhagen. Well, he acquired much of Ole Worm's specimen collection. About the same time, over in Iceland, there was a gentleman named Gisli Magnusson, who was the magistrate of the Radiorfjord region from 1649 to 1659. So he was at the fjord where the calcite is found, and he had studied science in the 1640s at Leiden in the Netherlands. So you had these early people who were studying science starting to get involved in the area. In 1668, King Frederick issued a royal order to start recovering calcite crystals from Iceland. During the 1650s, the time when Magnusson was the magistrate and that Ole Worm was interested, the calcite crystals from Helgustadir were starting to make their way to Denmark through the local trading posts. So King Frederick issued this royal order in 1668 to employ a stonemason for the period of 6 months to extract the Icelandic crystals. So this royal order, which you see here on display, authorized food and supplies for the mason and an assistant to start recovering calcite crystals. So this expedition in 1668 may have yielded the specimens that were first examined by our next character, Erasmus Bartholinus. You can see the years that he lived here. Bartholinus, and you'll see his name spelled different ways, Bartholine, Bartholinia. He was a Danish physician, a mathematician, and a physicist. He was professor of medicine at the University of Copenhagen, and he happened to be the nephew of Verme's wife. Okay, so a lot of these people were related. So he's the one who discovered or documented the optical phenomenon of double refraction or birefringence. It's hard to believe that nobody else would have ever noticed it. Maybe they never sought to understand why it did what it did. So Bartholinus noticed that images seen through Icelandic feldspar, at the time it was called Icelandic feldspar, which we know as calcite, that the images were doubled. When the crystal was rotated, one image remained stationary while the other rotated with the crystal. So he postulated that the light passing through split into two rays, an ordinary and an extraordinary ray. Now, Bartholinus was unable to fully explain the phenomenon, but it challenged Newton's optical theories that light was a stream of particles. The Dutch physicist Christian Huygens used Bartholin's samples to help develop his wave theory of light about 1672. So these early scientists were comparing notes, coming up with theories, challenging one another, discussing things on what was going on with light. So in 1669, Bartholinus documented his observations in a paper on his experiments with Icelandic crystals. And his work set the stage and started a progression of research, discoveries, and theories regarding crystallography and optics for the next 3 centuries. So this site at Helgustadir became well known for having very large and regular crystals and cleavages of calcite. And these cleavages were clear, colorless, fully transparent, with exceptional clarity and lack of flaws. So that's the important thing about having optical calcite. The mineral was first known as Icelandic feldspar, or Iceland crystal, or Iceland crystal spar, by 17th and 18th century mineralogists. The name got shortened to Iceland spar or Spath de Island in the literature about 1782 by Rene Just Hoy. Hoy was visiting the collection of his close friend, Citoyen de France de Croissant, and he dropped the calcite crystal and it fell on the floor and shattered. And when it shattered into similarly shaped but different sized fragments with all the same angles and features, like regular calcite would if you dropped it. So all these rhombs of calcite had come out of this one crystal, and he declared tout est trouvé, or everything is discovered. Hoy realized that the fundamental building blocks of this mineral species, and by extension other mineral species, was represented by this cleavage. So Hoy used Iceland spar in his early studies of piezo electricity, which is the electrical charge that is created in crystals under pressure. So let's look at this diagram to talk about the concept of double refraction. The top diagram shows it in a simple way. A ray of light, an unpolarized ray of light, comes into the calcite and it splits into 2 rays, an extraordinary ray and an ordinary ray. If you look at the lower diagram, it gives us a little more information. The unpolarized light, which is in a wave form, is vibrating in different planes, and the waves are in different planes. So when they enter the crystal on the left-hand side, the ordinary ray passes through, but it only, because of the design inside the crystal, it only allows the wave to come through in one dimension, and the extraordinary ray goes off in a different direction, and it's polarized. Its waveform is in a different dimension. So you can see how you have an ordinary ray, we'll call it vertical, and the extraordinary ray horizontal, and they've been split apart. Well, Bartholinus, in his 1669 image here on the right, is showing what he understood at the time, what he was observing, as he's trying to describe this concept of double refraction. So if you have writing on the paper here, and you're looking through the calcite rhomb, he says, well, by the time it comes to the surface, I'm seeing two different things. And that's what comes up to my eye. The single point is two images and it comes out of the crystal and I'm seeing two things. Okay. So the 1700s, they're studying the crystals, what's going on at the property. In 1814, we have this lithograph of the farm at Helgustadir, which shows looking across the Helgustadir farm from the quarry over at the mountain, Mount Homadir, across from the local village. And then this building in the photograph is the Orem and Wolf Trading Company building, which dates back to 1816. Now it's a local maritime museum, but it's where they shipped quantities of Iceland spar from during the mid-1800s. It was hard to tell how many tons they shipped out, but the crystals were leaving in freight vessels, on fishing boats, and scientific travelers. So they're making their way out of Iceland back to Europe. One expedition in the 1830s claimed to have removed 30 to 40 tons of Iceland spar crystals. Now here's a view from 1836 drawing by a gentleman named Eugene Roberts that shows a small brook cascading down and exposing Iceland spar, eroding the deposit of calcite crystals. And there's the drainage of that stream as you see it today. There's some similarity in the upper reaches of this area 200 years later. Enter another character, William Nicol. He lived from 1766 to 1851. He was a Scottish geologist, a physicist, and a scientific lecturer. Nicol, about 1815, he developed a method of preparing thin sections of rocks and minerals, petrified wood, actual wood, and he looked at their internal structures via transmitted light rather than reflected light. So he's analyzing the inside by shining the light through them. He also studied fluid inclusions in minerals. So really, he was one of the fathers of early petrography, which is literally the reading of rocks, on a micro scale. In 1829, he invented something called the nickel prism to generate polarized light. The nickel prism was the most cost-effective mechanism for creating polarized light. Now, it wasn't inexpensive, but it was the most cost-effective that they had. Here, Nicol is shown in 1806 reading to his blind uncle, Henry Moyes, who was the lecturer in natural philosophy at the University of Edinburgh. And Nicol followed in his footsteps in academia. And that image is from the National Portrait Gallery in London. And Nicol's home in Edinburgh is shown here at number 12 Inverleith Terrace. And our next slide shows a memorial plaque for William Nicol, the inventor of the polarizing prism that is everywhere known by his name. So in 1829, he invented this way of generating polarized light. And this assortment of objects below shows a couple things you would recognize and a couple things you wouldn't. Here's a rhomb of nice Iceland spar, and here's a sphere. And then we have a nickel prism that's painted black. Here's another nickel prism that's inside a brass enclosure mounted on cork. And then you've got this piece of wood that's sliced open in an interesting way. And so this assortment of things, some of these older things date to the 1880s. This wooden model shows how, and the next diagram will study it, of how Nicol prepared his polarizing prism by cutting the calcite and gluing it back together in a certain angle. So what Nicol did, if I can explain this upper diagram, is he took a rhomb of calcite, of Iceland spar, optical quality calcite, and he split it along this short diagonal and glued it back together with transparent Canadian balsam glue. He also cut this side at 68 degrees. The normal angles of the rhombohedron are 75 and 105, but he cut it at 68 degrees, okay? So what happens in the nickel prism, and you remember the diagram we already looked at that showed just the light passing through a rhombohedron of Iceland spar, is the unpolarized light comes in, it splits, and the ordinary ray is moving this direction, but it reflects off of this artificially created surface where he cut it using internal reflection, and it's thrown away and discarded. The ordinary ray is thrown out off this way. So it's unable to pass through parallel, kind of semi-parallel to the extraordinary ray. Now the extraordinary ray, because of its shallow angle, is able to go through this line and come out the other side as a polarized light. So now he has a pure polarized ray, and this one's thrown away. So you can imagine in the instrument below, which I flipped it around to help you understand, that with a nickel prism being inside this instrument, you can imagine light coming in and you have an eyepiece to look at your polarized light, and maybe another eyepiece to look at what you've thrown away or something like that. You can see how he's managed to split them in a way to keep what he wants to save. So these instruments were very famous, these optical instruments from the 1800s, because Nichols prisms were incorporated into these various instruments. In the 1840s, they were used in polariscopes, also known as polarimeters, to investigate the polarization of light and looking at through things such as organic liquids like a sugar solution. And if it was used in that case, it was called a saccharimeter. In the 1850s, Louis Pasteur used a polarimeter in his revolutionary organic chemistry studies. In the 1860s, photometers were used to measure the relative intensity of light. In 1870, polarizing petrographic microscopes were used in crystallography and mineralogy and petrography to examine thin sections of rocks and minerals. Many studies that led to Nobel Prizes in chemistry and physics made use of equipment that contained nickel prisms made from calcite crystals from Iceland. By the 1920s, polariscopes were widely used to study stress in engineering materials, which is called photoelasticity. On the left-hand image here, we see a microscope cross-section from 1876 of one of these polarizing microscopes. And on the right-hand side, we see a beautiful example of a polarimeter from 1890 made by the German optical instrument firm Franz Schmidt and Heinz, which has been around for 160 years and still going strong. Enter another new character, Carl Tullinius. Okay, we're back to the deposit. About 1850, the farm with the calcite was owned by a clergyman named Thor Eirinson. He owned 3/4 of it, and then the government, the state, owned 1/4 of the deposit, which likely dates way back. In 1850, a gentleman named Thompson, who was a merchant, took calcite overland by horseback to 2 fjords away to a Seyðisfjord fishing village and shipped some to Europe. In 1854, other merchants, H.H. Svensson, leased the farm to extract crystals. And they maybe mined 50 tons and paid a royalty of 10 rigsdaler a year to Arianson and 5 rigdollars a year to the government. So in 1863, Carl Daniel Gottlieb Tullinius, shown here, he made arrangements to operate the mine on a larger scale. And it so happened he was married to Arianson's daughter. He got a 5-year lease for the sum of 100 rigsdaler per year and got several extensions to it. And he was the one that undertook the major removal and stockpiling of crystals to supply customers. And he maybe removed about 280 tons of Iceland spar crystals. But then concerns about overexploitation and saturating the market led the government to prohibit further extraction in 1872. Maybe 300 tons were sold at about 300 kroner per ton. In 1873, Tulinius acquired his father-in-law's 3/4 interest in the property, but the government wouldn't grant him a lease. So the government purchased Tulinius's 3/4 ownership in 1879 for the sum of 16,000 krona, which is about $3,800 in 2008. The image to the right shows 2 French soldiers visiting the location about 1887. Quarrying resumed in 1882, overseen by Iceland national geologists. And this is who we mentioned earlier, who did the geologic map, Thorvald Thordarson. He did the 1901 geologic map of Iceland that shows all the basalt flows. And he was a resident of Copenhagen in 1895, professor by 1902, and he published numerous articles on geology and geography of Iceland, including about the spar localities. In 1882, Thordarson oversaw the removal of a small amount of crystals, maybe 13 crates, to a German optical firm. He felt the quarry could not be profitable, and he might have gotten some of his crystals from Tulinius's stockpile. In 1885, a politician and entrepreneur, Trygve Gunnarsson, removed and sold a batch of inferior material to a Danish laboratory supply firm. The image in the middle, we have Thordarson on the left. He was on a postage stamp. That must be the thing in Iceland. Get yourself on a postage stamp. And in the middle is the inventory of, in 1885, of the quarry tools that were used to mine the Iceland spar. It shows a list of ice picks, hammers, drills, buckets, boxes, barrows, and shovels. Blasting powder was used in the extraction process. Here are the quarry workers around 1900, and then a pen and pencil drawing from about 1893 that showed what the quarry looked like, where they extracted the Iceland spar. Well, Carl Tulinius had a son named Thor, and he followed his father in the Iceland spar business. It appears that he continued selling from the inventory of the hoard that his father had accumulated. The original concern had been about exhausting the deposit too quickly, and now the supply was limited, and so Tulinius had a virtual monopoly. There was a high demand and a shortage of quality optical calcite, known around the turn of the century as the Great Spar Famine in the scientific community. And there's a letter to the right here from the Swiss optical company Zeiss in 1906 regarding the availability of the supply of Iceland spar. They wanted it for their optical instruments. So you can see here's a large block of clear optical calcite. And in this German facility, they are cleaving the calcite to use it in scientific instruments. See the calcite ROM cleavage is there? And one of the things that calcite was used for in aerial and anti-aircraft gun sites during World War II and bomb sites, and it was a strategic war mineral that was obtained in limited quantities anywhere it could be found. So our next gentleman is Helgi Eriksson. He was a mining engineer in charge of the Helgustadir quarry in the 1920s, and he was the principal of the Reykjavik Vocational School from 1923 to 1954. You understand that Iceland was independent in 1918, but stayed in a royal union with Denmark until 1944. And when the Germans conquered Denmark in 1944, Iceland got its full independence because they didn't want to go with the Germans. So Eriksson was hired to resume quarrying at the site on behalf of the government. He drove a 70-meter tunnel from the hillside beneath the quarry to intersect the calcite zone, rather than work under an unsafe basalt overhang. He reported some tons of calcite that were removed for export through 1924. But unfortunately, there wasn't very much good quality stuff. And by the 1930s, substitutes for Iceland spar were becoming available. Optical calcite from South Africa and Brazil, and a few smaller local deposits elsewhere in Iceland. And other instruments were being developed to replace polarimeters for assaying sugar solutions. In 1933, an alternate man-made film known as Polaroid was developed by Edwin Land. Polaroid, which gives you polarized light, is composed of aligned microscopic needle-like crystals that are embedded into a sheet of plastic. The dichroic sheet transmits light in one plane direction, but not the other. So Polaroid is used in Polaroid sunglasses, camera filters, liquid crystal displays, and optical microscopes. So this ends the part of the program that talks about the history of Iceland spar and then what it was used for. Here's about our trip. So we're doing an 11-day tour around Iceland. We took the 10-day standard tour and added a day for this part of the trip. So in this picture, we are sitting at the peninsula between the two branches of the fjord at point A, looking over across the fjord towards B, where the Iceland spar location is. And you can see in the plan view, as we come around this road here we're looking across the fjord in this direction. We had just come by this big aluminum smelter because they have cheap hydroelectricity in Iceland. They're able to have a lot of industries that are electric intensive. So as we come around to the site, we go past these beautiful summer cottages and some industrial fish farming in these fjords, where they have large enclosures and are farmed by factory ships. And as we're up at the site now, you can see there's fish farm right down in the middle of the fjord with these circular enclosures. So we're up on the hill now at the Iceland spar locality, looking back towards where we had come from, up the fjord to the site. Now, if you're down on the road along the edge of the fjord, you just see a couple of these piles of crushed basalt as dump piles. Those are the mine dumps, looking from below, looking up. And at the parking lot is some really nice interpretive signs about the whole site. And much of the information in the signs comes from Dr. Leo Christensen's research, who wrote the article in Matrix, and he provided all the information for the government to mark this historic site. So we got a break in the weather, and we hiked up we put our rain gear on and hiked up from the car park in the rain. And as we got up to the top, it was clearing some across the fjord. It stopped raining a half hour, 45 minutes, long enough for us to enjoy the site. And you can see a map of the area from one of the interpretive signs that sort of showed us where we were walking to. Once again, looking up the fjord. You get to the site, and there's the Helgustadir quarry with a lot of broken basalt. No calcite seen in situ or even in the basalt matrix. If there was any white blobs, they were probably little stilbite pieces or common basaltic zeolite minerals, but no calcite. There's Elna Hauk and my wife Dawn at the entrance to the quarry. And here's a panoramic view from up above. Looking down at the quarry, you can see a lot of the sides have caved in because originally it was undercut, and Dick Hauk's looking around and he's not really seeing anything. Here's another view looking into the quarry. And what we did see, we saw some blueberry spar. And in the roadway and near part of the thing, there was some crushed up calcite, mixed calcite fragments that were kind of white and dirty. So as you look at the sort of the map that shows the geology and lay of the site, this map on the left was derived from the one that was done in 1880. And so it shows that stream coming down the hill on the one side, and then to the left of that, or to the west of that, is where there was this giant pocket of calcite. So the 1880 map shows this, and the French geologist de Cloizeau visited the site in 1848. He described an 18 by 9 foot single block of calcite. And in 1877, Mr. Le Bon described calcite that was abundant, still abundant, in ramifying veins coursing into the surrounding rock. Let me read from a description of 1880 that published in Merrill in 1910 to describe what the deposit looked like, since all we see is black basalt. He said, the veins of spar are in basalt, and at this spot have been laid bare through the erosive action of a small stream called the Sulfur Liquor, the Icelandic name of the spar being Sulfurberg. The quarry opening is on the western side of this brook and at date of writing was some 72 feet long by 36 feet wide. In the bottom and sides of this opening, the calc spar is to be seen in the form of numerous interlocking veins ramifying through the basalt in every direction and of very irregular length and width, the veins pinching out or opening up very abruptly. The high cliffs on the north side of the quarry are poorer in calc spar veins, the largest dipping underneath at an angle of about 40 degrees. A comparatively small proportion of calc spar is fit for optical purposes. That on the immediate surface is, as a rule, lacking in transparency. Many of the masses, owing presumably to the development of incipient fractures along cleavage lines, show internal iridescent rainbow hues. Such are known locally as lidstenars or light stones. Others are penetrated by fine tube-like cavities, either empty or filled with clay, and still other contain cavities, sometimes sufficiently large to be visible to the unaided eye, filled with water and a moving bubble. So you have some of those fluid inclusions in the crystals. The most desirable material occurs in comparatively small masses embedded in red-gray clay, filling the vein-like interspaces in the bottom of the pit. The non-transparent variety, always greatly in excess, occurs in cleavable masses and in perfectly developed rhombohedrons, sometimes 1 to 2 feet in diameter, associated with stilbite. So there's only a little bit of good optical calcite, and there's a lot of just white calcite found at the location. So in 1889, the Eton College chemist Hoskins Aberhall described a 35-foot by 10-foot working face of the quarry as originally full of, but now just lined with, immense crystals, like a lump of sugar with 10-inch grains. He was authorized to collect as many specimens as he wished, but he said the permission was not of very much use, there being about 5 feet of water nearly all over the bottom of the cave. Such specimens that I did get involved doing severe penance and walking barefoot over the sharp crystals. The floor of the cave is covered with a thin layer of very fine chocolate brown mud, which sticks tenaciously to one's feet as to the crystals. I had to resort to tooth powder to get the latter clean. Though the great heaps of spar which lie on the path side and in front of the mouth of the cave were all washed by the rain till they were as bright and transparent as ice. So here's Dick and Eleanor Howe. This was a lifelong bucket list site that they wanted to go to because Dick collects of one of his specialties is calcite, rhombs, and cleavages. And so as we wrap up the site here, here's some of the equipment from the 1940s. They reopened the site to crush some of the calcite to use it in making a stucco called rusty that was used in Iceland to coat the exterior of some houses. And so this gasoline engine was used to power the equipment. And this hut had rinsing tubs and sieves. And looks like there's some of the punched hole plate here for the steel rinsing and sizing screens. This was from 1943 to 1948. And there's that gasoline engine and its flywheel, and yours truly there. So this probably powered all the crushing, screening, and washing equipment at this little mill as they recrushed the dumps. Here's some of the maps that they showed on the signs at the parking area. They have a really nice plan view of what you were looking at, and then the cross section shows the adit tunnel, and then the old quarry. You saw in the old quarry we didn't really see much anything. It was black basalt. Well, after going in the quarry, I ventured down the hill to the adit, and so I had a LED light headlamp with me. So I went into that 70-meter adit that the mining engineer Helge Eriksson had driven in 1925. He had done that to get underneath the calcite deposit to make it safer to mine because of all the overhangs they had, and also would drain water out of the mine. Remember the guy who was walking around cutting his feet in the water? So the open cut quarry was worked more like a glory hole, and it was a drainage adit and access underneath. So I went in the adit, and inside the adit, there's a brick wall where there was a ventilation chimney, they said. I found this piece of mine rail in place for a mine car. And then the short steel ladder that I climbed up to go to a rising bench in the back near the north tunnel. There's remnant of tool room walls, and there's a lot of cold water dripping and draining. So after I went inside and explored around and looked, I came back out. I emerged to a dramatic view, an expansive view of the fjord as far as the eye could see from left to right. And in the paths outside is where when they crushed that stuff in the 1940s, you can see little pieces of calcite, mostly either brown stained or white, but not clear. These specimens shown here are from the Dick Halk collection. This is one he got years ago. He bought somewhere that's clear, but it's that brownish color. This one shows something interesting in calcite. It actually shows conchoidal fracture, which is unusual because usually it'll cleave and you won't see much fracture. But it's a very nice conchoidal fracture there. And then he has this really nice vintage Iceland spar specimen, which shows the double refraction with the historic label and everything. So you can see this nice block of calcite with the double refraction. That's a historic specimen. And so in closing to this part of the presentation, essentially this site yielded a large quantity of these water clear calcite cleavages that from the 17th century to the 20th century. And that's where the whole terminology of Iceland spar came from, that represents clear cleavages of calcite from anywhere, regardless of their source. And it's even reported that the Vikings may have used Iceland spar, known to them as sunstone, with its polarizing effect to help navigate the North Atlantic as a way of locating the sun, or even in dense fog, overcast skies, and mist. And in Reykjavik, they have this sun voyager sculpture that represents the image of a Viking ship. So our travel companions were Dick and Elna Hauk from the Sterling Hill Zinc Mining Museum founders. And they hosted our 2005 Mining History Association conference. And then they were our travel companions in the Fairbanks, Alaska conference in 2017. And we went to the Kennecott and Fairbanks in Alaska.
All right, Johnny, thank you very much.
Now,
Okay.
yeah, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them.
You can put them into the chat room. It's the easiest thing to do.
I don't have a question, but here's my
Oh, yeah.
spar that I wire wrapped.
Cool. That's a
Yeah.
nice good size.
Ask Andy to bring one in tonight to show everybody.
Let's see the chat. Yeah, there was a place a couple fjords away where they found a small deposit of Iceland spar, and then there's a place on the way west part of Iceland. But the basalt usually doesn't have it, and it usually doesn't have it in large amounts. They found more stuff at Brazil, Montana. There's other places, South Africa, places around the world. They found it when they wanted optical calcite, but nowhere was it found as big and huge and perfect as this one site. But it was rare even then. It was really a rare geological occurrence.
Are there any other places around the world to find a optical calcite?
Yes, just some of those places they find it, but it's sort of almost like accidental. You know, you're mining for something else and you find some, it was even hard to explore for, because it could be there in the basalt, but buried and no way of knowing that it's hidden unless it's been exposed to the surface. Now, if you want, I can spend 5 minutes and just show some pretty pictures of Iceland. if anyone would like to see them. I'm going to go back to share screen. And I think you'll enjoy these pictures. Okay, do you see it?
Yep.
Okay, so they all have a caption on them. I'm just gonna slowly scroll through and you can just enjoy what the beautiful pictures.
Julia's second great-grandparents were Johann and Emma Johnsson. Their baptismal record refers to them as being Scottish, meaning that they were itinerant farmhands, landless laborers, traveling from state to another, doing seasonal work, living under a system that seems to have been designed to keep them impoverished. Stardust had to be married, that was their rule. So both Johann and Emma worked together on the estate. They worked 7 days a week, including every holiday. Some of these little girls. Want to guess how much your ancestors would pay for all that hard work? Almost nothing. In exchange for all that work, your ancestors would have been given meager housing, food enough to subsist on, and very little.
That was in a snowstorm.
I may have missed it, but what month was this? Looks like you had really, really beautiful weather.
It was September. We had 3 good days, 3 awful days, 4 mediocre days. They say there's no such thing as bad weather in Iceland. It's only poor planning.
Well, let's see what they did about this. Could you please send the page?
Yeah, so they get on a boat or an ox cart at some point, right?
Could you please send the page? This is a list of passengers leaving the port of Göteborg, Sweden on April 1st, 1887, nearly 3 years after your great-grandmother's birth. Could you please read the summation?
Johann Johnsson, 27, birthplace Sweden, in Maryland, destination.
Oh.
So there was a volcano erupting near Reykjavik. And when we got to the airport, of course, it was raining. And as we rode in the taxi from the airport to town, you could see over in the mist kind of an orange pinkish glow. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. So there's something going on over there. We had arranged for a not inexpensive helicopter tour the last day of our trip. And so we explored Iceland the last day. The weather was gorgeous. We got a helicopter, but the volcano had stopped erupting 4 days earlier. So we flew over it nice and close, and there's sulfur deposit still steaming, and that lava is still, it's black. It's still, molten underneath, but we didn't see any orange. The storm we had that caught us in the middle of the week put everything above 500 feet in elevation on the island, with this glazing of snow. And we had to drive across passes through that and all, but it was really gorgeous. Anyway, I thought that you might enjoy just seeing a quick highlight of some of the things you can see in Iceland.
I know people who said that they love it there. They've been back a number of times because they just love being in Iceland. I think we have one more question. Did the Vikings use it for navigation?
Supposedly, I couldn't find anything definitive, but that I saw it mentioned, so I included that. They call it a sunstone, and that, if it was a cloudy day and you had something that would polarize or something, that maybe you could use it to tell the direction of the sun on an overcast day. I don't know how. I guess it's possible because the light coming from a direction maybe somehow. I don't know enough of it other than I read it somewhere.
And why I have you here, are you doing your Soldier's Delight walk in April?
I haven't picked a date yet, but usually it's around mid-April.
Okay. Let us know when you have it picked.
Okay.
We'll advertise it for you. Okay, thank you very much, Johnny,
Welcome.
for all your help and the program. Hey, Mel, do you know what's opposite a hot pepper?
What's that?
A little chili.
Ah,
And one more here. What's the difference between a guitar and a fish?
what's the difference?
You can't tune a fish.
That's a good one. I like it, Jerry. Round of applause.
Yeah, here I know what your round of applause are. Yeah, they're in there.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. 2 weeks time, we'll be back with groundwater. As always, this video will be on the Jones Geo website later tonight. You can tune in and watch it again or invite your friends to watch it. Very interesting program, particularly if you want to plan a trip to Iceland. And we'll have some more information about a big archaeology week coming up in June, next time that we see you. So go ahead, Melanie, take us out of here.
All right, everybody. Well, I hope you have a great, we won't see you, like Jerry said, another 2 weeks, but stay safe if our weather fluctuates a little bit, and have a great night.
See everybody.
Yep, we'll see ya.